Saya Namah. Om Kriya Babaji Namah. Vanakkam, Namaste. Good morning to everyone. I'm happy to meet you again in this session where we are going to discuss about Raja Yoga. This is brought to you by Acharya Gurudasan, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. This is a continuation of a session that we had last week where we discussed about classical yoga and we discussed about the three other forms of yoga, other yoga margas, which are Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga. And today we are going to talk more about Raja Yoga and in specific Kriya Yoga, which is a Siddha way of interpretation of Raja Yoga. Now, before we begin with Raja Yoga, let's just summarize what is yoga and what are the three forms that we discussed last week and why is yoga important. We discussed that for our happiness, the biggest hurdle is our mind and our identity of our personality with the mind and body. And this is what we also defined as ego. And this ego begins when the mind rises. Right? So the very first method or very first condition for us to be eternally happy is to remove that which causes all unhappiness and miseries. And here that refers to the mind. So how do we subdue the mind? And by subduing the mind, how do we subdue the ego? And that is why we found that there could be different methods that are applicable. There could be different methods that might be suitable for different kinds of people. And one is the Bhakti Marga, which is the path of devotion, where a person believes in something higher than himself. This is irrespective of religion again. So a person can call that entity as God. He can call it by the name of Allah. He can call it by the name of Shiva, Yesu, Jesus Christ, Krishna, Buddha, or any other names. But the philosophy here is that the person is dependent on the thought that there is something beyond him, there is something greater than him, and the soul aspires to be one with that divine phenomenon. Right? And in that separation, there is a longing for that person, that individual, to go and merge with the divine. He doesn't want anything but the divine. So in that state of intense yearning, what happens is the person's ego, mind, body, consciousness melts and then arises within him that reality with which he is identifying now, which is the divine realization. This is the Bhakti Marga. And then we discussed about Karma Marga. Karma Marga, as we said, it was the path of action, where we lose our sense of individuality, not to mean that we become idiots after that. It's just that we lose the importance that we give to this mind-body personality through selfless actions and selfless service, through charity. And any action done without the thought that I am the doer. And we discussed this is what Lord Krishna preached to Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita. Do your duties, do not expect the results, leave the fruits to me. That is the attitude of Karma Yoga. And as we perform actions without the thought that I am the doer, slowly what happens is there descends the realization that I am only an instrument. And slowly this mind-body ego takes a back seat and we realize that we are just an instrument of the greater working of the Master. That is the path of Karma Yoga. And then the other part that we discussed was the path of Jnana, the path of wisdom, where we inquire within us, start asking the question, something like, who am I? What am I doing? Am I this body? Am I this mind? And when we focus not as a merely a mental exercise, but more as an inquisitive quest within us, and we go deeper and deeper, what happens is our mind and awareness gets absorbed in the source of our mind, the place from where the mind arises. And at that stage, the mind gets subdued as it gets absorbed in the source, and what remains is Satchidananda. Once again, it's an immense ocean of consciousness, which is devoid or free from all the vagaries of the mind and emotions in the physical body. So these are the three parts that we discussed last week. And today we are going to discuss what is Raja Yoga, what is the royal path, and what is the approach it takes to understand our mind and subdue our mind-body personality and ego. Raja Yoga is a systematic approach where we don't just go beyond the mind, but we try to understand it. Not just the mind, every faculty of our existence, we try to understand it. And once we understand it and strengthen it, we are able to then transcend it and go beyond it. We get complete control of all the faculties of our existence. Now, to revise what are the different faculties of existence, we discussed that we are made up of 5 sheaths of body or 5 koshas. First is the Annamaya kosha, which is the physical body, which is made up of food. Annam means food, so Annamaya kosha is the physical body which is built based on food. Then we have the Pranamaya kosha, which is the emotional body or the energy body, where we experience our emotions. And then we have the mental body, which is the Manomaya kosha, which is made up of all the thoughts and memories. And then we have the Vijnanamaya kosha, which is the intellectual mind. When I say intellectual, it's beyond the mind and it's beyond the language. It is that place where we understand, where we have that abstract understanding of things and words and languages, even beyond language. The language is at the state of mind, but intellect is beyond language. It's the meaning behind the language. If I say a word, freedom, you know that the word is in English and you know the meaning of freedom. But when I utter the word freedom, there is something that you feel inside that will give you a sense of what freedom means to you. And that sense may be the same whether I say it as freedom in English or if I say it in any other language. So the meaning behind, that understanding behind something, that is what is there in the intellectual body or the Vijnanamaya kosha, which is the subtlest, and which is subtler than the Pranamaya kosha and Manomaya kosha. The subtlemost body is the causal body or the Anandamaya kosha, which is independent of all the 4 other koshas that we talked about. We don't generally experience this, or we don't give importance to this, we don't even understand its presence, but that is the very essence of our existence, that is lying behind all these 4 sheaths or 4 bodies or koshas that we talked about. And when we go to sleep, in deep sleep, when the physical body is completely relaxed and it is resting, the mind is completely resting, and the ego, the sense, is no longer there, and the emotions are no longer there. In deep sleep, we don't even have the sense of I. And that is a place where we get absorbed into the causal body, and all that remains is the causal body, or the Anandamaya kosha. The nature of Anandamaya kosha is bliss or joy. Okay, so in Raja Yoga, what we are going to do is, we are going to study each and every faculty that we just discussed. And we are going to have practices for each and every one of these koshas on how to work on them, how to relax them, and how to strengthen them, and how to go beyond them. Now, Raja Yoga was propounded by the Siddhas, and the most popular work that the world knows about Raja Yoga is Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. In fact, Patanjali did not create or invent these Yoga Sutras himself. All he did was, he just compiled the practices, the different practices that are prevailing, and he compiled them, and based on his own experience, he compiled them, put them together, and formulated a systematic approach and called it Kriya Yoga. And it is not just Patanjali, it is the same Kriya Yoga that is being taught by the Yoga Siddhas from South India, mostly from Tamil Nadu. But this doesn't mean that the Yoga Siddhas identify themselves as Tamils. They are common to the entire world. They do not differentiate between the races, people or religion. Right? So, what is Raja Yoga? What is Kriya Yoga? The word Kriya means action with awareness. It comes from the same root as karma. Kri here refers to action, and when we say Kriya, it is action with awareness. So, what does it mean? Any small action that we perform, do we put our complete focus into it? Are we completely aware of it? When I am moving my hand, am I aware that I am moving that hand? Is my concentration there? When I am talking, am I aware that I am talking? How my tongue rolls, how I am creating sound from my throat, and how the thought process develops. Any small action, it could be as trivial as brushing our teeth in the morning. So, do we do those actions with complete awareness? So, that is what is taught in Kriya Yoga. So, the very word Kriya means action with awareness. And Tirumoolar talks about it. Patanjali talks about it in his Yoga Sutras. And generally, what is common between both is that both of them call it as 8-limbed yoga or Ashtanga yoga. And this has a systematic approach of training our physical body, training our mental body, our vital body, which is the emotion body, our intellectual body, our Anandamaya Kosha, training each and every one of them to attain the maximum potential that they have, and by that we can reach the highest potential of human existence and transcend beyond that. And they give a systematic approach. Like I said, it's called the Ashtanga Yoga, 8-limbed path. So what are these Ashtanga Yoga? What are the different paths? Or what are the different limbs of Ashtanga Yoga? They call it Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana and Samadhi. So Samadhi is at the end. But what is Yama and Niyama? So before we start any spiritual path, before we start any yogic path, the very first requirement is to cleanse our mind, to cleanse our habits, to cleanse our actions, to start doing only good actions, to start speaking only the truth, to not have dishonesty, to not lie, to not have that thought to cheat people, to be jealous of somebody else. So yamas are the don'ts, niyamas are the do's. So these two initially prepare the sadhak or prepare the yogi so that he can go to the next state. If the mind itself is not pure, then it will be very difficult for a yogi to attain and progress to the next stages in the Ashtanga Yoga that we talked about. Then we talk about asana. What is asana? For us to sit and recognize and analyze our minds, to go deep within, it is not a simple exercise. In 10 minutes we cannot understand. It's a lifetime project, right? And which it requires a long hours of sadhana, long hours of meditation, long hours of inquiry. And for that we should be able to sit still and also comfortable for longer durations. So Patanjali defines asana as a comfortable and stable posture. He doesn't say anything else. So he calls asana as any comfortable and stable posture which allows us to sit for longer durations without moving. Right? Then pranayama. What is pranayama? We will discuss that in more detail going forward. Here pranayama means it's a science of moving the prana within our body through the use of breathing. So these are slightly more advanced than the breathing exercises that our doctors prescribe. These are more energy focused. So after pranayama, what comes? Dharana, dhyana and samadhi. And before that, then we have something called pratyahara. Pratyahara is withdrawal of senses. If we consider our mind, how does our mind get distracted? We want our mind to be focused in one point, right? That is what we are going to learn in dharana and dhyana. But for that, for the mind to be one pointed in focus, we find that it's a little difficult. So what is the difficulty? Mind goes out in many directions. It's very difficult for us to stay within, to turn the mind inwards, to turn our awareness inwards, because we have been habituated to look outside, to see outside, to perceive outside, but we have not practiced anything to turn inwards and look what is inside us. Right? So how does this mind, how does this awareness go out? It is through what we call as the doors of perception, the five senses. So what are these senses? The eyesight, the sense of smell, taste, the physical body, and also the hearing. Right? So these are the five senses. So our mind gets distracted and it goes out, our awareness goes out through all these five senses. It's not to say that these senses are bad, they are against our spiritual quest. It's not to say that. But then these are distractions as long as they are our masters. So we want to bring them under our control. So whenever we want to perceive something in the outside world, we should be able to use these senses to their fullest potential and capacity. At the same time, we should also have the mastery over these senses, so that when we want to sit and stay focused on one particular object or particular subject of meditation, we would want to be able to bring them all in, withdraw all these five senses within and not lose our awareness through them. So that is pratyahara. Then dharana. Dharana is meant to simply say one-pointed concentration. And there are many common practices that we have heard of for developing our concentration. One such practice is that sitting in front of a lamp and watching its flame, just looking at the flame of that lamp without any other thought, just watching the flame, just looking at the flame. So it's not just a Hindu practice, so even in Christianity they do that, but they use a candle flame for that, right? So how does this help? So we shut off all the other senses. We have only our eyesight, because that is the strongest sense that we have, and we use that eyesight to focus on one particular object, which is a subtle flame that we can see in front of us, and we stay there, we stay focused there. And we reject every other notion, every other thought, every other sense, and we stick only to looking at the flame. And that is dharana, where we are developing one-pointed concentration on one particular object. The next stage is dhyana. So what is dhyana? In dharana, we discussed that it is about developing one-pointed, unwavering concentration on a particular object that is outside us. Dhyana is internalizing that object. When we are able to internalize that object and we no longer have to look outside, but we can shut even our eyes, which is the most powerful sense that we have. When we can shut even that and bring that object of meditation inside us and focus inside, that becomes dhyana. It could be anything, it need not just be a candle flame. It could be your favorite deity, it could be the picture of Jesus Christ, it could be the picture of Siddhartha, Agastya, or it could be your favorite motorcycle or your car, it could be anything. But the thing is, the mind is focused and it remains still on only one object in dharana, and when you internalize that object, it becomes dhyana. When we mature in dhyana, when we are able to sit longer durations in dhyana, we acquire more control over our mind and we acquire more control over our senses. We learn to withdraw the senses as in pratyahara. We learn to stay focused on one object as in dharana. And in dhyana, we learn to internalize that object and stay focused on that one thing. And when we develop that capacity to stay longer duration in dhyana with that focus on that one particular subject or object of meditation which is internalized, there comes a stage where even that object drops. And what remains is pure subject, pure consciousness and pure awareness. And that is what is called the state of samadhi, which is the 8th limb of Ashtanga Yoga. In that state of samadhi, there are different states of samadhi. I would not want to go into detail of that at this moment. But when I talk about samadhi here, I am talking about the highest state, which we call it as the nirvikalpa samadhi. So what happens here is we slowly lose the object and what remains is only pure awareness, pure subject. And even when we dig deeper and deeper, even that drops off, and what remains is pure existence. And what is existence? Who all exist? Everything exists, right? But when everything exists, but we have lost the sense of I, we have lost the mind, we have lost the, we have subdued the mind and senses. We no longer have the thought that I am the body, I am the mind, and all that remains here is pure consciousness and just pure existence. We feel that existence not only within us, not just limited by time and space. So only within the time and space our identity is limited to this body. We transcend the time and space boundaries, and when that happens, we feel our existence in everything that is present in that is present in the creation. Every single organism, everything, a single object that is animate or inanimate, a table, a chair, a rock, we find our presence in everything, in the stars, in the cosmos, in the sun and in the moon. That is the highest state of all the mystics from different religions that they try to explain. Unfortunately, one cannot explain that state of samadhi because we can explain something that we observe, that we experience. But we have learned so far that when we observe something or when we experience something, it is only through the five senses. So, if I want to describe this lamp, I have to look at this lamp. So, I am using my senses. And then there is a subject-object difference here. There is the object that I am looking at, and there is the subject who is looking at, and there is this action of looking at it or observing the lamp. Right? When I do that, I can describe how the lamp looks. So, when somebody is able to describe something, so there is an object that he is describing and there is a person who is describing it. Now, in the state of samadhi, I said the object drops. There is no longer anything, any object present, and there is only the subject that is there. So, there is no observation. The subject is present in everything and everywhere. So, now the lamp is part of me. Lamp is not separate from me, lamp is part of me. Right? In that sense, in that state, there is nothing to observe, there is nothing to experience, because we just are. That is the state of simply being. And that being is everywhere. It's like a substratum that pervades everything in creation. And that transcends time and space. And it is in that state where we have completely lost the subject-object relationship, and hence it cannot be disturbed. That's why my teacher, Master Govindan, used to say, a person who knows samadhi doesn't talk about it. A person who talks about samadhi doesn't know about it. Correct? So, unfortunately, for teachers like who teach yoga, who teach samadhi, they have to point the way. So, we have to put in some kind of words, and these words never do justice. Words are not enough to describe that state, because it's pure experience. There's nothing to observe. It's even beyond experience. Even when we say that I experience something, there is a person who's experiencing it, and there is an experience which becomes the object there. So this is beyond that state even. So there's nothing to observe and nothing to explain or describe. So all that we could do is we could point or guide and show that there is something called samadhi, there is something called Vettaveli, as the Siddhas would call it, and there is something called God or Allah, as the devotees would call it or address it. And all we can do is show you the path of how to go and be one with it, how to become one with it, how to merge with it. But then it cannot be described in words. We can describe the different practices that can help you go there, but we cannot actually describe the experience itself. It's not even an experience, like I said, it's even beyond that. We were discussing about Raja Yoga and the Kriya Yoga, which is an aspect of Raja Yoga as taught by the Siddhas. And we were discussing about the different koshas that the Raja Yoga addresses. We also discussed about the Ashtanga Yoga, the 8 limbs that form the Kriya Yoga. Now, so to go deep into each of these 5 koshas, let us start with the physical body, which is an Annamaya kosha, which is made up of, which is built by based on food. Like I said, Annam means food. Now, when we want to attain perfection, when I say the Siddhas, who are the Siddhas? The word Siddha means person who has attained perfection. So, what do we mean by perfection here? perfection in all aspects of existence. So, what does it mean if I say perfection in all aspects of existence? So, that is reaching the highest potential in each of the various faculties of our existence. Like taking the physical body to its highest potential, taking the mental body to its highest potential, taking the vital body, the emotion body to its highest potential, and taking the intellectual body and Anandamaya kosha to their highest potential. And a person who has received, who has attained perfection in all these five bodies is able to transcend them and go beyond these five bodies, and he becomes independent of identifying himself with the body and mind. So that's why we call someone like that a Siddha. Examples of Siddha are Agastya, Bhoganatha, Tirumular, Babaji, Vallala, Ramalika Swami from Vadalur. So these are some of the examples. There are so many more actually. Gorakshanath, Konganavath, there are so many more. In Tamil tradition, it is auspicious to say, talk about the 18 Siddhas. That doesn't mean that there are only 18 Siddhas. 18 is just a holy number. So a number to represent. Same in the North tradition. In North India, they used to call it as Navanath Siddhas. In the Nath Sampradaya, these Siddhas were called as the number associated was 9. So that doesn't mean that there are only 9 Siddhas. It's just a nice number to represent them. That's it, like the Saptarishis. Now, the Siddhas are those who have attained perfection in all these five bodies. And they have shown us the path on how we can attain that as well. So how can we attain the full benefit, full potential in human body? For that, we should first learn how to relax the human body and how to develop the human body and how to treat the human body well. Now, in the Vedanta tradition, of course, in the highest philosophy level, Siddhanta and Vedanta are not very different. They all speak about the same reality, one reality. But then, when it comes to the hierarchy, it's nothing higher than the other. But then, Vedanta is where Veda ends, Vedanta begins. Vedanta means the beginning and the end of Veda, right? Where we summarize the gist of Veda in terms of Upanishads. And now, where Vedanta ends, that is where Siddhanta begins. Right. So, what is the difference there? In terms of reality itself, there is no difference. But the difference comes in terms of attitude. So, a Vedantic Jnani sees no difference between retaining a body and not retaining a body or dropping it off, because he no longer identifies himself or herself with the physical body. So, for them, there is no difference if they keep the body or not keep the body. So, some people choose to drop their body. Majority of people attain that complete jnana at the time of their death. Very few people attain the state of Jivan Mukta, that is, they attain the state of jnana or complete wisdom even when they are completely alive. Examples are Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, Ramana Maharshi, Vallala, Neem Karoli Baba, etc. And then the Siddhas are those who retain their body. It's not that they are attached to their body. They retain their body for higher cause. They retain their body and preserve it so that it can act as an instrument of the divine. Once again, there is no difference in attainment of a jnani and a siddha. Right? It's just based on their samskaras, based on the divine will. Someone chooses to be a siddha, someone chooses to be a jnani. That's it. Right? Now, to attain perfection in human body, what the Siddhas have taught us is that there is something called Hatha Yoga. And Hatha Yoga means it's a Hatha is derived from two syllables, Ha and Ta. Ha refers to Surya Nadi or the Pingala Nadi in our body, and Ta refers to Chandra Nadi or the Ida Nadi in our body. Now, what are nadis? Nadis are channels, energy channels within our body. They are in our subtle body, actually in our vital body. So if you cut open your hand or your body, you cannot see the nadis. They are not the physical nerves. Although they work very closely with our nervous system, they are not the physical nerves. Nadis are in our Sukshma Sarira. Right? So in Hatha Yoga, what the Siddhas teach us is how can we use our body, how can we train our body through some practices where our body is balanced, the body is relaxed, all the tensions in our body are relieved, and in an advanced state, we can use Hatha Yoga to cleanse these energy channels within our body, the nervous system. And they say that there are 72,000 nerves in our physical body, in our vital body. So the Siddhas have devised methods for us using our physical body. We can train our physical body, attain the required fitness, and becoming slim through yoga postures is only a side effect. That was not the main reason why the Siddhas invented yoga, right? That is only a side effect. What is being taught now in studios, in most cases, is very focused on the physical aspect. Nothing wrong, you still get the same benefit, but then the focus is not beyond the physical. That's all I'm saying here. So when we practice yogasana, that is Hatha Yoga, for the physical body, it helps us to, once again, to reiterate, remove all the stresses, remove all the tensions in our muscles that we have gathered in our daily lives, remove all the logs in our joints in different parts of our bodies, and relax the body completely. If the body is not relaxed, the mind cannot be relaxed. Right? So first thing that the Siddhas taught us is learn to take care of your body, learn to relax your body. Like I said, the difference in Siddhas is that they also give importance to the physical body, they don't neglect it. Tirumula says in one of the Tamil verses that the body is the temple and the Lord lives inside it. So knowing that, I am going to take care of this body because not for my own sake, but as a temple for the divine. And that is why the Siddhas have always taught us to not neglect the body but also take care of it. And how do we take care of it? There are many practices. Asanas are what we are very familiar with. Apart from asanas, we also have something called mudras and bandhas, which are psycho-energetic locks and gestures. Bandhan is a muscular lock. So there are different bandhans like Mula Bandha, Chandra Bandha, Uddiyana Bandha, etc., which help us to direct our prana shakti, which is the life energy, through different parts of our body. And then mudras are psychokinetic gestures, like the most famous is the chin mudra that the Dakshinamurti has. Okay? And there are many other such mudras aimed at various objectives to help us stay focused in our meditation or also to circulate the prana within our body. So that is Hatha Yoga, which is addressed at the physical body. Next, we talk about the slightly less grosser, slightly subtler body than the physical, which is the pranamaya kosha, or the vital body, or the energy body. Pranamaya kosha is slightly subtler, but we all experience it on a day-to-day basis. This is where all our emotions are. I'll give you a small example. When we get angry, we can feel the sensations within our physical body. So the emotion actually is so connected to our physical body that it translates into a physical sensation. Correct? When you get angry, you can feel the heat in your ears, your face turns red. And how do I recognize my vital body? I can give you a very familiar example. Say you have a very favorite sports personality, or a film star, or even your favorite spiritual guru. If somebody comes and argues with you that your favorite personality is not so good, how do we feel? Initially, we start explaining why we think that person is good or great, and then we start rejecting the other person's ideas. And even after that, if the argument continues, we become restless. We all have gone through this, right? We become restless. Something gets agitated in us. What is that? That is our emotional body. That is where our emotions are. Technically speaking, an emotion is nothing but movement of energy within our body. A specific movement of energy within our body, that is an emotion. So if we learn to gain control over our energy, which is prana shakti, or what is called as prana, then we gain control over our emotions as well. So what are the techniques that are available for taking care of our emotional body or vital body? What is called as pranayama. Pranayama means the scientific art of mastering our breath, and through our breath learning to draw this prana through our body and pass it through all the subtle channels all the chakras, there are 6 plus 1, 7 chakras in our subtle body. So pass this prana shakti inside those chakras, through those chakras, to nourish those chakras and to expand those chakras, and also to gain more benefit out of the opening of those chakras. So that is pranayama. Using pranayama, we can draw in more and more prana shakti within our body, and we can no longer depend only on food and sunlight and water to gain energy. We can gain a lot of energy from air itself that we breathe in. I'll give you a small example. In Tamil, the word for oxygen is called pranavayu. It's called pranavayu. Here, there are two meanings to prana. Pranam, generally when we speak in our colloquial language, pranam means life itself. So when we say prana shakti, what we mean is life energy. It is that energy that is required for keeping us alive. It is that energy that is helping the heartbeat. It is that energy that is helping us in digestion. It is that energy that is keeping our mind work. It is that energy that is keeping our intelligence active. That is prana shakti. Where do we get prana shakti? Like I said, from sunlight, from water, from food, and from the air we breathe in. Now, we cannot eat more food than our stomach can take, right? But we can always breathe in as much as we want. So pranayama are techniques where we increase the intake of this oxygen and make sure that we use the fullest capacity of our lungs to inhale as much prana vayu as possible. In that way, bring in more and more prana shakti within us. This way, we will have more energy and we will gain more control over our pranamaya kosha, which is the emotional body. Next is the manomaya kosha. What is manomaya kosha? Like I said, manomaya kosha is the mental body. Mental body is where our mind is. So, what is mind? If you think about it, mind is nothing but a collection of thoughts. Are there only thoughts? Not just thoughts, we also have memories, which also express themselves only as thoughts. Correct? So, we can say mind is a collection of our thoughts, our knowledge that we have, and our memories. If we remove all these things away, there is no such thing that is existing called mind. In deep sleep, once again, none of this exists. We don't have any thought, we don't have any awareness, we don't have any knowledge, we don't even recognize our own presence, like we talked earlier. So mind is completely at rest then. So this manomaya kosha is completely about our thoughts, and these thoughts require energy. This manomaya kosha and the vital body, that is the pranamaya kosha, they are so interlinked with each other that they go so closely. So any emotion can trigger a set of thoughts, a flow of thoughts, and any thought can also trigger a set of emotion. Right? So they are so closely interlinked. So it's very difficult to see them as black and white. They are not so distinct. They are so interlinked. So that is the manomaya kosha. So how can we master our mind? If we sit and watch our thoughts, per second, how many thoughts do we get? Per minute, how many thoughts do we get? Are we in control of what thoughts we want to think? Of course, we can force ourselves to think about something, but then if we just simply sit and watch, there are just a number of thoughts that are flowing without even our awareness. So are we thinking those thoughts? So it begs us to question whether we are actually the masters of our mind, or if the mind actually is controlling us. But then the Siddhas and the Yogis have devised methodologies for us to gain complete control over the mind. Like I said, mind is also part of, it also encompasses the five senses, because it is through these five senses we acquire any knowledge that we have. So the five senses plus our analytical mind is what gives us all the knowledge that we currently know of. Is there anything else that we do not, that we know, which we acquired without the help of these things? Probably no. Right? So, if we learn to concentrate our mind, if we learn to make the mind do only what we ask it to do, if we learn to train it, then we can surpass it and go beyond. So, then we can subdue the mind and go beyond. So, what are the practices addressed on the mind in Kriya Yoga? We have something called Kriya Dhyana Yoga, and in Kriya Dhyana Yoga, we teach a series of meditations where we address the different faculties of the mind. Like I said, mind is not very a simple thing. I just put into very simple words that it's a collection of thoughts and our senses and analytical part of the mind. But then there are different faculties of our mind. So we have the subconscious, which keeps giving us different thoughts. We have the five senses, the internal senses, where the mind perceives, not just the physical senses, but the internal senses, that is also part of our Manomaya Kosha. So we have certain meditation techniques that can be addressed on that to train those senses as well, so that the senses also come within our control. And we are not so distracted, they are completely in our control. So which can also help in pratyahara, withdrawal of senses. So there are these practices, meditation practices that can help in becoming the master of our mind and gaining complete control over our mind and senses. Next level of subtlety, we have the fourth kosha, which is called the Vijnanamaya kosha, or the intellectual body. Okay, so how is the intellectual body or the intellect different from the mind? There's a very subtle difference between mind and intellect. They are once again so tightly interwoven that it's very difficult for us to understand the difference. But here I can give some examples for you to understand where does the intellect start and where is the mind start. Like mind is where our knowledge is. Mind is where our knowledge and our understanding of languages are. Okay? So all the languages, the words, our memories, our past thoughts, everything is present in our mind and our subconscious. Now, intellect is where the abstract understanding takes place, the abstract understanding happens. Okay? So, like I explained earlier, so when I say the word freedom, what is it that you feel? It's not just a translation of the word, but then it means something to you, and that meaning that you understand, which is beyond the language, that is what we call as the intellect or the abstract understanding, which happens in the intellectual body. Right? So how can we train the intellect? How can we train the intellect so that it, with identification of mind, no longer thinks of itself as a mind-body consciousness? Right? So in Kriya Yoga, we have a series of practices called Kriya Mantra Yoga, address that mind and the intellect. So all these practices, so the Kriya Hatha Yoga is addressed at the physical body, Kriya Kundalini Pranayama is addressed at the vital body, Kriya Dhyana Yoga addressed at the mental body. They are not so black and white. So each of them help the others as well. Right? And Kriya Mantra Yoga once again will help the intellectual body, at the same time it also helps our mental body. So how does it do? What is mantra yoga? What is mantra in the first place? Is it so religion based? I want to give some more clarifications on mantra and mantra practice here. The word mantra is the combination of two different root words in Sanskrit, man plus tra. Man means the mind and tra means to protect. So to protect the mind. Mantra means to protect the mind. To protect the mind from what? To protect the mind from its own nature. What's the nature of our mind? To keep thinking, to keep throwing us thoughts, to keep throwing us emotions, to keep throwing us fears and desires. All that is happening in our mind, which is causing a huge misery in our lives, and it doesn't allow us to focus on the present moment. So we either worry about the future, or we think about the past and we feel sad about it or happy about it. So we are not living in the current moment. So to bring the mind and intellect under control, we have something called mantra. What is a mantra? It is the repetition of certain syllables put together. Okay. So if you say Om Namah Shivaya, that is a mantra. But here it looks like it has a bit of a meaning. So Nama is calling the Lord, and Shiva is the ultimate source of super consciousness. Not the person, not Rudra. We are not talking the person with tiger skin and Ganga on his top. We are not talking about that person. By Shiva, what we mean is that absolute substratum of super consciousness that pervades everything, and it's present everywhere. That is what is also called as Parabrahma, or that is also what the Siddhas call as Bettavedi. That is what is also called as Nirvana. Right? So when we say Om Namah Shivaya, we say that, okay, Om, I bow unto thee, that which is the ultimate, that which is everything. Right? So it looks like it has a meaning as well. But when we keep repeating it in our mind, what happens is our mind gets focused on that mantra. So when we keep repeating, what also happens is that other thoughts are rejected. The mind's nature, like I said, is to throw more thoughts at us. So other thoughts are rejected, and we come and stick back to the chanting of the same mantra again and again. So the more we practice like this, what happens is it becomes like an automatic radio that is running inside us. The mantra becomes an automatic radio that is running inside us, even without our own intention to start chanting. So then the practice of mantra goes to a next level where we are not chanting it mentally, but rather we are listening to what is getting chanted inside us. So that is the level of subtlety that a mantra practice can take us to. And it need not just be pure devotion based, it can be even a jnana yoga, person in jnana yoga can use mantra to a very high benefit. How is that possible? Okay, a person in the devotion, in the path of bhakti, when he chants the mantra, he also brings in that emotion. If he chants the mantra of Krishna, if he chants about Jesus, if he chants about Rama, he brings in that emotion because he is in love with the divine, in love with the deity. So he brings in that emotion. So through that he melts and he loses his identity and he realizes the self. Now a person in Jnana Marga, if we assume that he is not so emotional, how can he use this mantra? When you start chanting the mantra mentally, the best benefit of mantra comes when we chant it silently within us. We were discussing about mantra yoga and how it is more intuitive for people in the path of bhakti to chant mantras with more emotion and devotion. And now we will look into how people in Jnana Marga or the path of wisdom can use mantra yoga for their benefit. Like we discussed in the last episode of the video, the Jnana yogis are people who are inquisitive. They go deeper and they do what is called a self-inquiry, and by doing that they go deeper and deeper to the origin of mind, to origin of where the thought starts, and thus their mind gets absorbed there, and then they understand from where their sense of existence comes in. So that is the path of Jnana Marga. So how can the jnanis use, how can the people in Jnana Marga use mantras for their benefit? When we mentally chant the mantras repeatedly, even though if we are not emotionally so attached to that mantra or that syllable, what they could do is they can focus on from where that sound emanates from within. When I am chanting a mantra repeatedly, when I am repeating it mentally, internally, over and over again, when I start focusing on from where that mantra originates, from where that internal mental sound of that syllable originates, the mind gets absorbed into that source. And thus the people in Jnana Marga can go to the source even through the practice of mantra. In Kriya Mantra Yoga, so what we have is the Guru Mantra, which is called Om Kriya Babaji Namo. And similarly, in different traditions, based on different gurus, there are different mantras. For different siddhas, we have different mantras. So if someone is so connected to Shiva, one can chant Om Namah Shivaya. If someone is so connected to Muruga, you can chant Om Sharavana Bhava. If someone is so connected to Siddha Ragasya, you can chant Om Agatisaya Namaha. So it doesn't matter. What matters is the mantra itself, right? In Kriya Yoga, the Mula mantra is Om Kriya Babaji Namo, because he is our Sadguru in Kriya tradition. Now, apart from this, what is also taught in Kriya Yoga, like I said, as it is a synthesis of the Siddha tradition from South India, there are teachings of Siddhas who had a better understanding of our vital body, and that is also being utilized and that is also being helped by the practice of Mantra Yoga. So within our vital body, we have the different chakras. These chakras are like the meeting point of different nadis that we earlier discussed, and there are 7 major chakras along our spine: Mooladhara, Swadhisthana, Manipuraha, Anahata. In the throat it is the Vishuddhi. Then we have the Agnya chakra, which is the eyebrow center, and then we have Sahasrara, the point of oneness, right? So all these chakras, they vibrate at a particular frequency, right? And there are different bijas. Bija means seed. There are different bija syllables associated with each of these chakras, right? Now, like I said, if the chakras are vibrating in one particular frequency, And if you are repeating a sound or a syllable that is also vibrating in the same frequency as the chakra, what happens? This is just a normal physical phenomenon of sound. It is called resonance. In Tamil they call it as Othadirvu. Like when there are two vibrations that are happening and those frequency is same, they resonate with each other, right? So we teach the seed syllable of mantra for each of these chakras. They do not have a meaning. It will just be like lam, right? That is a bija. Like shrim is a bija, om is a bija, right? They don't have a meaning. They are just sound. They are just frequency. And each of these sound syllables, they vibrate with the chakras and they resonate with the chakras, and thus they activate these chakras. So these chakras can unfold and we can get more and more benefits, and we can develop more and more faculties out of the highly evolved state of these chakras. So that is what is taught in Mantra Yoga. And then the last aspect of Kriya Yoga, the fifth phase, is also called Kriya Bhakti Yoga, which is not very different from the Bhakti Yoga that we discussed, right? So Kriya Yoga itself is an integrated system of yoga. So Raja Yoga, like I said, is an integrated system of various practices put together systematically so that we have an approach, we have a methodology to go step by step, stage by stage, to understand each and every faculty of our existence, and to have practices that addresses to different aspects of our existence, so that we learn and we mature and reach a stage where we can gain complete control over our body, mind and emotions, so that they are subdued. Once these are subdued, the mind, body, consciousness is subdued, the ego gets subdued, and then we get opened up to higher faculties like intuition and connection with the Sadguru or the highest self. Right? So what is Kriya Bhakti Yoga? It is not different from Bhakti Yoga that we earlier discussed. So Bhakti Yoga is an aspiration of the soul towards the divine. So what we do is we take practices, we do bhajans are like singing God's praises, we chant God's name and do activities like charity, etc. in the name of God. So all these activities where we develop an attitude of devotion towards the Lord, towards the Sadguru, towards the highest self. Like I said, the God could be an entity or a deity of your preference, or it could be the abstract superconscious level, formless, that is formless as well. Right? So how do we develop devotion? One cannot teach devotion, it has to come from within. We can say, okay, you do these practices, but then the devotion should start flowering from inside. So if somebody says, okay, from tomorrow you be very devoted to God, so from tomorrow you start loving God, that will have no impact unless I can connect with that verse, unless I can connect with that God, right? That will have no impact. So this devotion is something that has to flower from within, and that is where the heart chakra opens, etc. And how can we go towards that? In the beginning we can do some rituals, we can do some pujas at home. So those are all aspects designed to focus our mind on the deity, so that the awareness is focused. This also helps in dharana and dhyana indirectly, right? And then we can sing songs, sing bhajans, and slowly as we keep doing this more and more, automatically the devotion unfolds within us, and we start feeling more and more emotionally connected to the highest self. That is Kriya Bhakti Yoga. So we discussed about the 5 phases of Kriya Yoga. So we said that Kriya Yoga is a particular method of Raja Yoga that the Siddhas have devised. So Kriya Yoga has Kriya Hatha Yoga, which is postures, bandhams and mudras designed to address the physical body. Then we have Kriya Kundalini Pranayama, where we have a set of pranayama techniques which are addressed at learning to master our breath and to draw our prana and to circulate our prana through our chakras in our vital body all the way up to Sahasrara. So that is Kriya Kundalini Pranayama. Then we have Kriya Dhyana Yoga, which is a series of meditation techniques where we learn to gain mastery over our mind. Then we have Kriya Mantra Yoga, where we learn to practice mantras and we learn to use the mantras to both protect our mind as well as our intellect and transcend them. And then we have Kriya Bhakti Yoga, where we develop this devotion, this intense longing, this intense bliss, this intense yearning to be one with the divine. So that is directly addressed at the Anandamaya Kosha, the fifth kosha that we talked about earlier. So based on this, we can see that it's a complete integrated system. This Raja Yoga is a complete integrated system. So even though we say that it is a separate category than Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga and Karma Yoga, the Raja Yoga itself encompasses aspects of all of those things. So a person who can identify with certain aspects of practices can do that more. A person who identifies with a different set of practices, he has enough room and freedom even within the Raja Yoga perspective, so that what he can practice more of what he can connect with. That is Raja Yoga. So when I spoke about Pranamaya Kosha, I said Kriya Kundalini Pranayama. I uttered a word called Kundalini, right? So what is Kundalini? A little more details on that and we will close today's session. Kundalini is the man's potential, highest potential, the man's highest energy, highest consciousness, levels of consciousness. And it remains untapped, it remains almost like sleeping in our Muladhara chakra at the base of our spine. And in the path of yoga, the yogi's objective is to awaken this Kundalini through the various practices that we earlier discussed, to awaken this Kundalini and draw this Kundalini energy through the Sushumna Nadi. We talked about Nadis earlier. I said Ida Nadi, Pingala Nadi. So there are three main Nadis out of the 72,000. And these three Nadis are: the central one is Sushumna Nadi, which flows along the center of our spine. Then we have the Ida Nadi, which is like slightly to the left of the Sushumna Nadi, and then the Pingala Nadi, which is slightly to the right of the Sushumna Nadi along our spine. Now the Pingala Nadi, which is on the right, is associated with the quality of heat, and the Ida Nadi, which is to our left, is associated with the quality of cooling. That's why one is called Surya Nadi and one is called Chandra Nadi. And generally, Ida Nadi and Pingala Nadi are generally open for most of the human beings, even though they do not perform any of the yogic practices. You can notice that these nadis are connected directly to our breath. If we notice our breath, you will notice that at any point of time, you will either be breathing through the left nostril or through the right nostril, not through both. Right? So one left nostril controls your right brain, right nostril controls your left brain. So there comes the Swara Yoga aspect of it. Right? So the Sushumna Nadi, which is in between, at the center, is generally not open, generally not active. That energy current is not generally active. So the objective is to awaken this Kundalini, to open the Sushumna Nadi and pass the Kundalini energy through the Sushumna Nadi, or through all the chakras, all the way up to the Sahasrara. So when this Kundalini, which is the potential in consciousness that we have, raises above through the chakras and comes over to the third eye, this is the last point of duality, where a man realizes his individual self and he sees the difference between himself and the divine. Once he crosses the third eye, that duality drops, and then the Kundalini, when it raises to this Sahasra chakra, that Siva Shakti Aikyam or Siva Shakti union happens there. The Yin and Yang get balanced there. Right? So how do we open the Sushumna Nadi? That we open by balancing Ida and Pingala. When Ida and Pingala are balanced, the Sushumna Nadi automatically opens. When we are in deep states of meditation, when we start feeling a little bit of a tingling sensation in our third eye center, that is a sign that the Sushumna Nadi is slowly getting awakened. So how do we balance Ida and Pingala? Through the practices of Pranayama, through the practices of Hatha Yoga, and also through the practices of Dhyana and Mantra Yoga. Right? Now, how do we awaken Kundalini then? All these practices help us in awakening Kundalini, but that is not enough. To awaken Kundalini, the first and foremost and the most important aspect that one should cultivate is compassion. Universal compassion, like empathy towards each and every living being, not just towards the humans, towards each and every living being. So this is what was preached by a great Siddha known as Ramalinga Swamigal, who we lovingly call as Vallala. he taught that his path was the path of Sanmarga. And what he preached was Jiva Karunyam. Jiva Karunyam means pure compassion, universal compassion towards all living beings. So unconditional love, unconditional compassion, that is a sense that we have to develop, an attitude that we have to develop. And when we develop that slowly, and when that takes root in our being naturally, the heart opens, and that is when Kundalini will actually get awakened, and it will pass through the center and it will reach all the way to the top. So what happens when it reaches all the way to the top? That is when the sense of duality, that the mind-body personality, I am the Jiva and there is a Shiva or a higher Lord above that I have to reach, that sense of duality drops, and all that remains is the higher state of consciousness, the super consciousness that we identify with, the state of Samadhi. So that is the aim of a yogi. And one additional information I want to say before I close this session. The word yoga is used widely, and in different contexts they mean slightly different things. Majority of people who are new to the spiritual path or yoga, they might understand yoga as a set of physical postures. But over the last 2 episodes of this video recording, we saw that yoga is much more than just the Hatha Yoga part of it or the physical posture of it. Right? So, the one other area where the word yoga gets mentioned is in Shaiva Siddhanta. We have this Charya, Kriya, Yoga and Jnana. These 4 are the stages of reaching the divine. It is explained, right? So how is this different from Ashtanga Yoga? They are not very different. Just the jargons are different and the categorization is slightly more broader. That's it. So Charya is where is equivalent to Yama and Niyama in my understanding. So Yama and Niyama are our do's and don'ts that we learned in the Ashtanga Yoga. So Charya is like purifying our mind, purifying our habits, purifying our actions. So Kriya is where we perform rituals and where we develop the devotion. So that is where Kriya comes. So this here Kriya is not like the Kriya that we discussed earlier, action with awareness. Although if we perform all these rituals with awareness, that also helps. So here Kriya means developing devotion and doing activities like worshipping the Sadguru or worshipping God and developing devotion, etc. It could be. Right? The third is yoga, and here yoga means Ashtanga Yoga. What the Siddhas taught. It's not the categorization that we earlier discussed, like Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, etc. Here yoga means Ashtanga Yoga or Vasi Yoga that the Siddhas described, where a set of practices is used for us to gain the understanding of our current existence of our mind, body, intellect and Anandamaya Kosha, to increase their potential, to strengthen them, and the practices to go beyond them, transcend them. So that is the path, that is yoga, and in fact we can probably say that they are meaning Kundalini Yoga here. Right? So what is Jnana? Jnana is considered as a goal where we lose the sense of individuality. And once again, when we lose the sense of individuality, it doesn't mean that we become idiots and we lose consciousness. What happens is something even more higher, even more clearer consciousness takes root in us, where we no longer identify ourselves with the mind and body. Rather, we identify ourselves one with everything in creation. And that is the knowledge, that is the wisdom, that is the jnana that we get, the state of jnana that is described in Shaiva Siddhanta as Charya, Kriya, Yoga and Jnana. I'm very happy to have met you in these 2 recordings. In the forthcoming sessions in the week, what we will learn is, we will learn certain aspects of each of the 5 phases of Raja Yoga that we described, certain asanas, how to chant certain mantras and how to meditate, all these things. So we will learn in the upcoming sections. For now, it's thank you and goodbye from me. This is Gurudasan signing off from Agastyavanam. Thank you. Namaste. Let us talk a little bit about the Kriya Yoga tradition from which I come from. Like I said, my name is Gurudasan, as I introduced in the last video. The tradition I come from is called Babaji's Kriya Yoga. So here by Babaji, we are referring to Mahavatar Babaji, who was described in Autobiography of Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda, and more details are also given in the book called Babaji and the 18th Siddha Kriya Yoga Tradition, which was written and published by Marshal Govindan through Babaji's Kriya Yoga Trust. Marshal Govindan himself is a disciple of Yogi Ramaya. Yogi Ramaya was directly initiated by Kriya Babaji under the foothills of Himalayas in Badrinath into the various practices of Kriya Yoga in the years early 1950s. And Yogi Ramaya taught Kriya Yoga to a number of people, and Marshal Govindan was one of his senior most disciples. And it is from this lineage that I learned Kriya Yoga, and I am able to